The space around Nexus Prime buzzed with activity like a busy marketplace. Hundreds of alien ships filled the dark void, their hulls gleaming under the light of 3 suns. Each vessel was a masterpiece of technology, built by civilizations that had conquered the stars thousands of years ago. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Perseverance, watching the alien fleets through the main view screen. Her weathered hands gripped the railing as she observed the incredible display of power surrounding her ship. At 52 years old, she had seen many things in her military career, but nothing quite like this. The annual Galactic Fleet Review was the biggest military gathering in known space. Every major civilization sent their best warships to show off their latest technology. It was part celebration, part competition, and part diplomatic meeting. For humanity, it was their first invitation to participate. "Look at that beauty," whispered Lieutenant Commander James Park, Chen's second in command. He pointed to a sleek vessel that seemed to shimmer like liquid mercury. "That's a Zephyrian cruiser. They say it can fold space around itself and appear anywhere in the system in seconds." Chen nodded but said nothing. She had studied the files on every major fleet present. The Zephyrians were masters of quantum physics, able to bend reality itself to their will. Their ships could dance between dimensions, making them nearly impossible to hit or catch. Nearby, a massive crystalline structure caught the sunlight and split it into rainbow patterns across space. The Vorthon dreadnought was the size of a small moon, its transparent hull revealing complex geometric patterns inside. The Vorthons had evolved beyond physical form centuries ago, existing as pure energy within their crystal ships. They could phase in and out of normal space at will, becoming untouchable ghosts when threatened. "Jesus," muttered Ensign Rodriguez from the sensor station. "The energy readings from that thing are off the charts. It's like they've got a miniature star in there." The serene bioships were perhaps the most disturbing sight of all. These vessels were alive, grown rather than built. Their hulls pulsed, with veins of glowing fluid and tentacle-like appendages waved slowly in the vacuum of space. The Sirene had merged their technology with biology so completely that their ships could heal from damage, adapt to threats, and even reproduce if needed. Chen watched it all with a calm expression, but inside she felt a familiar knot in her stomach. The same feeling she'd had as a young officer when facing her first real battle. The difference was that back then, she had been fighting other humans with similar technology. Today, humanity was a child among giants. The communication channels, crackled with dozens of alien languages, automatically translated by the ship's computers. Most of the chatter was friendly enough, commanders greeting old friends and discussing technical specifications. But Chen noticed when the topic turned to humanity's contribution to the fleet review. "Have you seen the human ship yet?" The voice belonged to Admiral Kex Thorin of the Hegemony, a militaristic alliance of several species. His words dripped with amusement. "I'm not even sure it qualifies as a warship." Laughter echoed across multiple channels. Chen's jaw tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. Her crew glanced at her nervously, but she simply nodded for them to continue their duties. The Perseverance was indeed different from every other ship in the fleet. Where the aliens had built sleek, graceful vessels that defied the laws of physics, humanity had created something that looked like it belonged in a scrapyard. The ship was a massive rectangle of gray metal, its hull scarred by countless repairs and modifications. Thick armor plating covered every surface, giving it the appearance of a flying fortress rather than a spacecraft. There were no smooth curves or artistic flourishes. Every line was straight, every angle sharp and practical. The ship's weapon, ports were visible as dark slots in the hull, and its engine exhausts glowed with ordinary fusion fire rather than exotic energy. It looked exactly like what it was, a machine built by engineers who cared more about function than beauty. Did the humans bring their garbage hauler by mistake? The comment came from Commander Zillith of the Crystalline Consortium. More laughter followed, this time from dozens of species. Dr. Emily Watson, the ship's chief scientist, looked up from her station with anger flashing in her eyes. "Captain, are we going to let them talk about us like that?" Chen held up a hand for silence. Let them talk, Doctor. Words never sank a ship. The mockery continued as more alien commanders joined the conversation. They compared the Perseverance to various pieces of industrial equipment, outdated cargo vessels, and mining platforms. Some suggested that humanity had sent the wrong ship entirely, perhaps meaning to contribute to a construction project rather than a military demonstration. Look at those weapon systems, commented a Vorthan captain, his voice tinkling like wind chimes. Are those actually kinetic projectiles? How quaint. We stopped using solid ammunition when we learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level. Their shields appear to be simple electromagnetic barriers, added a Cyrene commander, her words carrying the strange harmonics of a hive mind. No temporal distortion, no dimensional phasing, no adaptive matrix. It's like looking at our own ancient history. Chen walked slowly around the bridge, checking each station. Her crew worked quietly and efficiently, but she could see the tension in their shoulders. These were good people, experts in their fields, and they had worked for months to prepare the Perseverance for this moment. Hearing their efforts dismissed so casually was hard for anyone to bear. Lieutenant Park approached her quietly. Captain, the Galactic Council is requesting that we take position in the outer formation with the observer vessels. They say it's for our own safety during the demonstrations. Chen almost smiled at that. The observer ships were for diplomats, scientists, and other non-combatants who wanted to watch the fleet review without participating. Being grouped with them was a clear insult, suggesting that humanity's warship wasn't capable of keeping up with real military vessels. Tell them we'll maintain our current position, she said calmly. But Captain, they specifically said, I heard what they said, Lieutenant. Tell them we're staying put. The alien chatter continued, growing more dismissive. By the minute, they discussed humanity's primitive technology with the tone of adults watching children play with toys. Some expressed pity that such a young species had been invited to participate at all. Others suggested that humans might be better suited to support roles like cargo transport or asteroid mining. Perhaps they could serve as target practice, joked Admiral Kexathoran, causing another wave of laughter across the fleet. Chen's communications officer, Petty Officer Sarah Kim, turned to her with barely controlled fury. Captain, request permission to respond to these. Denied, Chen said quietly. Maintain radio silence except for necessary tactical communications. The truth was that Chen had expected this reaction. She had read the intelligence reports about galactic politics and military culture. Humanity was the newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel, the youngest member of the Galactic Council, and by far the most primitive in terms of technology. The other species had been exploring space for millennia, while humans had only reached the stars 200 years ago. But there were things about humanity that the aliens didn't understand. Things that couldn't be measured by the sophistication of their engines or the elegance of their weapon systems. Chen had seen those qualities in action during the border wars with the rogue AI collective and during the colony evacuation at Proxima Station when everything went wrong. Captain, called out Ensign Rodriguez, I'm picking up some interesting energy signatures from several of the alien ships. It looks like they're charging weapon systems. For demonstration purposes only, Chen replied. They're getting ready to show off. She was right. The first part of the fleet review was always a display of raw firepower. Each species would demonstrate their most impressive weapons against specially prepared targets, derelict ships, asteroids, and energy barriers, designed to showcase different types of destructive capability. The Zephyrians went first, their Mercury-like ship folding space to appear instantly beside a massive asteroid. A beam of pure quantum energy lanced out, and the rock simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed or vaporized, but erased from reality as if it had never been there at all. The demonstration lasted 3 seconds. The crowd of alien observers murmured appreciatively. Several species applauded through their communication systems, creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones. Next came the Vorthans. Their crystalline dreadnought phased partially out of normal space, becoming a ghost-like outline against the stars. Even in this state, its weapons remained fully functional. A barrage of coherent energy beams struck 3 different targets simultaneously, each beam passing through solid matter to strike at the molecular level. The targets collapsed into perfectly spherical balls of compressed matter, their atomic structure completely reorganized. The Cyrene bioship's demonstration was particularly disturbing. It extended several tentacle-like appendages toward an old frigate that had been provided as a target. The tentacles didn't fire weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, they somehow infected the target ship with a biological agent that spread across its hull like a living thing. Within minutes, the entire vessel had been converted into organic matter, writhing and pulsing before finally dissolving into space. "Dear God," whispered Dr. Watson, "they turned it into soup." Each demonstration was more impressive than the last. Weapons that controlled time, devices that turned matter inside out, beams that could ignite the fusion reactions in a star. The assembled aliens had casual access to forces that human science barely understood. And through it all, the Perseverance sat silent and motionless, its crew watching and learning. "So," Admiral Kexthorn's voice cut through the chatter, "what? Does the human ship have to show us? Some kind of chemical explosive, perhaps? A very large bullet?" The laughter was no longer good-natured. It had an edge to it now, the cruel amusement of bullies who had found an easy target. Several species began making bets about what primitive weapon the humans might reveal. The suggestions ranged from nuclear missiles to giant slingshots. Chen stood in the center of her bridge, hands clasped behind her back, and made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. "Communications," she said quietly. "Open a channel to the fleet." Petty Officer Kim looked surprised. "Captain, are you sure? They've been—" "Open the channel." The bridge fell silent as Kim activated the communications array. Every ship in the fleet could now hear whatever Captain Chen chose to say. The alien chatter died away as thousands of beings waited to hear from the primitive humans. Chen's voice was calm and steady when she spoke. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Perseverance. We thank the Galactic Council for inviting us to participate in this demonstration of military capabilities." More snickers echoed across the communication channels. "We understand that our ship appears primitive compared to your magnificent vessels. We know that our technology seems crude and our methods outdated, but there is something you should know about humanity before we show you what the Perseverance can do." The laughter stopped. Something in Chen's tone had changed, becoming harder and more serious. "We are not the fastest species in the galaxy. We are not the strongest or the most advanced, but we are stubborn. When something threatens what we protect, when someone stands in the way of what we believe is right, we don't surrender. We don't retreat. We find a way to win." Chen paused, looking around at her crew. Every face showed absolute trust in their captain's judgment. The Perseverance was not built to impress anyone. It was not designed to be beautiful or elegant. It was created for one specific purpose, and every system on this ship exists to serve that purpose. You have shown us weapons that erase matter, that bend space and time, that transform the very nature of reality itself. Another pause. The entire fleet waited in absolute silence. "Now let us show you what happens when humans decide that something absolutely must be destroyed." The silence that followed Captain Chen's words lasted only a few seconds before the alien laughter returned, louder and more mocking than before. Admiral Kexthorn's voice boomed across the communication channels, filled with cruel amusement. "Oh, how terrifying," he said, his words dripping with sarcasm. "The primitive humans are going to show us their ultimate weapon. What could it possibly be? A really big rock? Perhaps they plan to ram us with their flying scrapyard?" The laughter spread through the alien fleets like wildfire. Commanders from dozens of species joined in, their various forms of amusement creating a cacophony of sounds. Clicks, whistles, harmonic tones, and electronic buzzes filled the communication channels as thousands of alien beings found entertainment in humanity's apparent delusions of grandeur. Chen closed the communication channel and turned back to her crew. Their faces showed a mixture of anger and embarrassment, but also trust. These people had served with her for 3 years, through battles that would have broken lesser crews. They knew their captain didn't make empty threats. "They think we're joking," muttered Lieutenant Commander Park, his hands clenched into fists. "Let them think that," Chen replied calmly. "It doesn't change what we're here to do." The formal challenges of the fleet review began shortly after the weapons demonstrations ended. These tests were designed to evaluate the tactical capabilities of each participating vessel through a series of standardized scenarios. Speed trials, precision maneuvers, defensive protocols, and combat simulations would determine which ships truly deserved to be called the elite of galactic military forces. The Zephyrian cruiser went first in the speed trials. The sleek vessel folded space around itself and appeared to teleport across the designated course, covering a distance of 50,000 kilometers in what seemed like an instant. The official time was recorded as 0.03 seconds, though most observers agreed that measuring such speed was meaningless, since the ship hadn't actually moved through normal space. "Impressive as always," commented the Galactic Council's moderator, a being whose species Chen couldn't identify. The Zephyrians continued to demonstrate why they are considered the masters of rapid deployment. The Vorthon Dreadnought's attempt was equally spectacular. Instead of moving through space, it simply phased out of reality at the starting point and materialized at the finish line. Since it had technically never existed in the space between the 2 points, its time was recorded as 0 seconds. Other species showed off their own versions of faster-than-light movement. The serene bioship seemed to swim through space like a fish through water, its organic systems allowing it to ignore several laws of physics. The Hegemony's flagship demonstrated something called temporal acceleration, moving at normal speed, but somehow arriving before it had started. When the Perseverance's turn came, the alien observers prepared for another round of entertainment. The massive human ship engaged its engines and began to move forward at what could only be described as a stately pace. Its fusion drives glowed with steady blue light, pushing the vessel through space using simple Newtonian physics. "Are they serious?" asked Commander Zillith of the Crystalline Consortium. "They're actually using reaction drives in a speed trial." The Perseverance completed the course in 18 minutes and 47 seconds. By galactic standards, it might as well have been standing still. Several alien ships could have completed the same course hundreds of times in that duration. The precision maneuver trials went no better for humanity. While alien vessels performed impossible feats of spatial manipulation, the Perseverance lumbered through the obstacles like a cargo freighter navigating an asteroid field. Its movements were precise and calculated, but painfully slow compared to ships that could phase through solid matter or teleport between positions. "At least they're not hitting anything," observed Admiral Kexathoran with mock admiration. "Perhaps humans could find employment as very, very slow taxi drivers." The defensive trials revealed more of the same pattern. When energy weapons were fired at the participating ships, the aliens demonstrated miraculous technologies. Some vessels became completely intangible, allowing the attacks to pass harmlessly through them. Others surrounded themselves with temporal fields that slowed incoming projectiles to a crawl. The most advanced ships simply redirected the attacks to alternate dimensions where they could do no harm. The Perseverance took a different approach. When the test weapons fired at the human ship, it made no attempt to avoid or deflect the beams. Instead, the massive vessel simply absorbed the impacts with its thick armor plating. Scorch marks appeared across its hull as energy weapons struck home, but the ship continued functioning normally. "Fascinating," said the Vorthon captain in his musical voice. "They appear to be using their hull as a shield. How wonderfully primitive." "It's like watching our ancestors," added a Cyrene commander. "Back when we thought physical matter could actually protect us from energy weapons." Dr. Watson looked up from her damage control station, her face red with anger. "Captain, hull sections 12 through 15 are showing minor scoring from those hits. Nothing serious, but they're literally using us for target practice." Chen nodded calmly. "Note the damage in the log, Doctor. Continue monitoring." The combat simulation trials were perhaps the most humiliating for humanity. Each ship was required to engage in mock battles against standardized drone opponents. showcasing their tactical systems and weapon accuracy. The aliens performed like artists, their ships dancing through space while unleashing devastating attacks that eliminated targets with surgical precision. The Zephyrian cruiser folded space around its targets, trapping them in dimensional pockets, where they could be destroyed at leisure. The Vorthon dreadnought phased its weapons into the interior of enemy ships, bypassing shields and armor entirely. The Cyrene bioship infected its opponents with some kind of nanobiological agent that turned their own systems against them. When the Perseverance engaged the drone targets, the contrast was stark. The human ship's weapons were kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams, technologies that most galactic civilizations had abandoned centuries ago. The ship moved slowly and deliberately, targeting each drone with methodical precision and destroying them with overwhelming firepower rather than technological superiority. "They're using mass drivers," observed a hegemony technical officer with barely concealed disgust. "Actual physical projectiles. What's next, catapults?" "And look at those energy weapons," added another voice. "Simple, coherent light beams with basic particle acceleration. It's like looking at a museum display." The Perseverance completed the combat trial successfully, destroying all targets within the allotted time. But where other ships had achieved victory with elegance and style, the human vessel had simply hammered its opponents into scrap metal through brute force and superior firepower. As the formal trials concluded, the diplomatic channels buzzed with discussion about humanity's performance. The tone had shifted from mere amusement to something approaching pity, mixed with contempt. Several species began suggesting that humans might be more suitable for non-military roles within the Galactic Council. "Perhaps they could handle cargo transport," suggested Admiral Kexthorn in a voice loud enough for the human ship to hear. "Those thick hulls might be useful for carrying mining equipment to asteroid belts." "Or waste disposal," added Commander Zillith. "That ship already looks like a garbage hauler anyway." The serene hive mind offered its own observation. "They demonstrate admirable persistence, but their technology is thousands of years behind galactic standards. We suggest they focus on agricultural development or primitive manufacturing until their civilization matures." Captain Chen listened to it all with the same calm expression she had maintained throughout the trials. Her crew looked to her for guidance, for some sign of how they should respond to the mounting insults. But she simply stood in the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind her back, watching the alien fleets through the main view screen. "Captain," said Lieutenant Park quietly, "the Galactic Council is broadcasting on all frequencies. They want to make some kind of official statement about the trials." Chen nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The view screen shifted to show the Council's official moderator, a tall being with multiple arms and crystalline features. Its voice carried the authority of civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. "The fleet review trials have concluded," it announced. "We have witnessed remarkable demonstrations of technological advancement from our member species. The Zephyrian Confederation, the Vorthon Collective, the Serene Unity, and the Hegemony Alliance have all shown why they remain the premier military forces in known space." The moderator paused, and Chen could almost feel what was coming next. Regarding humanity's participation, the Council acknowledges their unique approach to military technology. However, given the obvious disparity in technological capabilities, we believe it would be in everyone's best interest to classify human vessels as support craft rather than frontline warships. The alien fleets erupted in approval. Thousands of beings across dozens of species expressed their agreement with this diplomatic solution to the human problem. It was a polite way of saying that humanity's ships were too primitive to fight alongside advanced galactic forces. This classification would allow human ships to serve in valuable support roles, the moderator continued. Cargo transport, construction projects, asteroid mining, and other essential services that support our military operations. We believe this approach maximizes humanity's contribution to galactic security while acknowledging their current technological limitations. Chen's communication officer looked at her expectantly. "Captain, are you going to respond to that?" For the first time since the trials began, Chen allowed herself a small smile. Not yet, Kim, but soon. The formal fleet review was supposed to end with the classification announcement, but Chen had requested permission for one additional demonstration. The Galactic Council had granted this request with amused indulgence, curious to see what other primitive spectacle the humans might provide. Most observers expected another embarrassing display of outdated technology. Admiral Kexathoran's voice boomed across the communication channels once more. "Oh, this should be entertaining. What's next, humans? Are you going to show us your secret weapon? Perhaps a very large hammer?" The laughter that followed was cruel and dismissive. Thousands of alien beings settled in to watch what they expected to be the final humiliation of humanity's first participation in the fleet review. Chen walked slowly around her bridge, checking each station one final time. Her crew worked with quiet efficiency, making final preparations for something the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Watson caught her eye and nodded silently. Everything was ready. "Communications," Chen said quietly. "Open a channel to all ships." The laughter died away as the human captain's voice filled the communication frequencies once again. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, fellow commanders of the assembled fleets, I want to thank you for your patience during our participation in these trials. You have shown us wonders beyond imagination, technologies that our species can barely comprehend." Chen paused, looking around at her crew one final time. "You have classified our ship as a support vessel, suitable only for menial tasks while the real warriors fight the battles that matter. You have suggested that humanity should focus on mining asteroids and hauling cargo, while more advanced species handle the serious business of galactic security." Another pause. The entire fleet waited in absolute silence. "Before we accept this classification, there is one thing we would like to show you. One demonstration that might change your understanding of what humanity brings to the galaxy." Chen's voice grew harder, taking on the tone of a woman who had seen too much war and learned too many hard lessons. "You see, there is something about humans that your advanced civilizations have never needed to learn. Something that comes from evolving on a world where everything wants to kill you, where survival requires not just intelligence, but absolute, stubborn determination to keep fighting when all hope seems lost." The bridge crew moved with practiced precision, their hands dancing across control panels as systems that had been hidden for months finally came online. "We are not the fastest species in the galaxy. We are not the most advanced or the most elegant. But when something threatens what we protect, when someone stands between us and what we believe is right, we don't just find a way to fight." Chen's smile was cold as winter stars. "We find a way to win, and sometimes, when the situation requires it, we find ways to break things that others thought were unbreakable." The moment Captain Chen finished speaking, something changed aboard the Perseverance. The ship that had appeared so crude and primitive began to transform before the eyes of the watching alien fleets. Sections of the outer hull started to retract with mechanical precision, sliding away to reveal the vessel's true nature. What the aliens had mistaken for simple armor plating was actually an elaborate concealment system. As layer after layer peeled back, the Perseverance revealed itself to be something far more complex and terrifying than anyone had imagined. "What the hell is that thing doing?" Admiral Kexathoran's voice had lost its mocking tone. For the first time since the fleet review began, he sounded genuinely concerned. The ship's transformation continued. Massive support structures emerged from the hull, extending outward like the ribs of some enormous creature. These weren't weapon mounts or sensor arrays that the aliens recognized. They were something entirely different, built with a level of engineering precision that rivaled anything in the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Park watched the readings on his console with growing amazement. "Captain, all systems are green. The concealment protocols worked perfectly. No one suspected a thing." Chen nodded, her eyes fixed on the main view screen where the alien fleets hung motionless in space. She could see their ships adjusting position, slightly sensor arrays turning toward the Perseverance as commanders tried to understand what they were witnessing. "Dr. Watson, status report," Chen ordered. The chief scientist looked up from her station, her face glowing with excitement and pride. "All primary systems are online, Captain. The gravity well generators are spinning up to full power. Magnetic containment fields are stable. We're looking at approximately 15 minutes until we reach optimal configuration. Gravity well generators? The voice belonged to Commander Zillith of the Crystalline Consortium, and it carried a note of disbelief. Impossible. No species has successfully weaponized gravitational manipulation on that scale. Dr. Watson turned to her captain with a questioning look. Chen considered for a moment, then nodded her permission to respond. Commander Zillith, this is Dr. Emily Watson, chief scientist aboard the Perseverance. I'm afraid you're mistaken about the impossibility of gravitational weapons. Humanity has been working on this technology for over 3 centuries. The communication channels erupted in a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and growing concern. Alien scientists and military officers demanded technical details, while their commanders tried to assess whether this represented a genuine threat or another human delusion. 3 centuries? The Vorthan captain's musical voice carried a note of skepticism. Your species has only had faster-than-light travel for 200 years. How could you have been working on gravitational weapons before you even reached the stars? Chen decided to answer that question herself. Because we weren't trying to explore the galaxy, Captain, we were trying to survive. She gestured to Lieutenant Park, who activated a holographic display showing Earth's solar system as it had appeared 400 years ago. The image showed a blue-green world orbited by a small gray moon, with the red planet Mars visible in the distance. 4 centuries ago, our astronomers detected something approaching our solar system, a rogue planet, roughly twice the size of our homeworld, on a trajectory that would pass close to Earth, close enough to disrupt our orbit and destroy all life on our planet. The holographic display updated, showing the path of the massive interloper as it swept through the outer solar system, its gravitational influence pulling planets from their stable orbits. We had 50 years to find a solution, Chen continued. 50 years to develop technology that could save our entire species. We couldn't move our planet out of the way. We couldn't destroy something that massive. But we could try to change its path by manipulating gravity itself. Dr. Watson took over the explanation, her voice filled with the passion of a scientist, discussing her life's work. The project consumed the resources of our entire planet. Every nation, every organization, every brilliant mind working toward the same goal. We built the first gravitational manipulator in lunar orbit, using it to practice on asteroids and small moons. The alien observers listened with growing fascination as the human scientists described their desperate race against extinction. The story was unlike anything in galactic history. Most civilizations had achieved faster-than-light travel through gradual technological development, not through the desperate need to prevent planetary annihilation. The weapon worked, Chen said simply. We deflected the rogue planet just enough to send it into the outer system, instead of through our orbital path. Earth survived barely. But the experience taught us something that no other species in the galaxy has ever needed to learn. Which is? Asked Admiral Kex Thorin, though his voice had lost its earlier mockery. That sometimes the only way to survive is to build weapons that can break the universe itself. The Perseverance continued its transformation. The massive ring, structure that formed the heart of the ship, was now fully exposed. A perfect circle of ultra-dense matter suspended within electromagnetic fields that could be seen glowing even in the vacuum of space. The ring was enormous, nearly 1/2 kilometer in diameter, and it spun slowly with a sound that somehow carried through space itself. Alien sensor operators began reporting readings that made no sense according to their understanding of physics. Gravitational distortions rippled outward from the human ship like waves on a pond. Space itself seemed to bend and twist around the massive ring, creating visual distortions that hurt to look at directly. That's impossible, breathed the Serene commander, her hive-mind voice filled with something approaching awe. The energy required to manipulate gravity on that scale. It would take the total output of a star. Not the total output, Dr. Watson corrected gently. Just most of it. She gestured to another section of the ship where additional systems were coming online. Banks of fusion reactors, each one the size of a city building, glowed with contained, stellar fire. But even these massive power sources seemed small compared to the central ring that dominated the vessel's structure. The Perseverance isn't really a ship in the traditional sense, Chen explained to the watching fleets. It's a mobile platform built around a single weapon system. Every other component exists to support and protect that primary function. The ring's rotation began to accelerate. What had been a slow, almost stately spin increased to speeds that created a visible blur. The gravitational distortions intensified, causing some of the closer alien ships to adjust their positions as their navigation systems registered impossible readings. Captain Chen, the Galactic Council moderator's voice carried a note of official concern. We request that you power down your systems immediately. The gravitational anomalies you're creating are interfering with navigation across the entire fleet. I'm afraid I can't do that, Chen replied calmly. We're still in the preparation phase. The weapon isn't even close to full power yet. The word weapon sent a shockwave through the alien fleets. What had begun as curiosity and scientific interest suddenly transformed into something much more serious. Military commanders began issuing orders to their crews, raising shields and charging defensive systems. You're talking about a weapon that manipulates gravity itself, Admiral Kexthorin said, his voice tight with tension. Do you have any idea how dangerous that could be? Gravitational weapons don't just destroy targets, they can destabilize entire star systems. We're aware of the risks, Chen assured him. That's why we've spent 3 centuries perfecting the technology. That's why every human ship carries gravitational sensors capable of detecting the smallest disturbances. That's why we built the Perseverance with enough safeguards to contain a supernova if necessary. Dr. Watson added her own technical assessment. The weapon system has been tested extensively in uninhabited systems. We know exactly what it can do and how to control it. This isn't some experimental prototype we're playing with. The ring reached critical velocity. The gravitational waves emanating from the human ship were now strong enough to affect the movement of nearby vessels. Several alien commanders reported that their ships were being pulled slightly off course by forces they couldn't counteract with conventional propulsion. All ships maintain minimum safe distance of 50,000 kilometers from the human vessel, ordered the council moderator. This is not a request, it is a mandatory safety protocol. The alien fleets began to withdraw, their earlier mockery replaced by genuine concern and growing fear. Some species had weapons that could destroy planets, but none had ever developed technology that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe with such casual power. Captain, reported Ensign Rodriguez from the sensor station, I'm detecting significant gravitational lens effects around the ship. The ring is actually bending light around us. Some of the alien vessels are having trouble maintaining visual contact. Chen nodded. She had expected this. The gravitational field generated by the weapon was so intense that it distorted space-time itself, creating effects similar to those found near black holes or neutron stars. To outside observers, the Perseverance was beginning to look like a ship wrapped in its own event horizon. Dr. Watson, time to optimal configuration? 7 minutes, Captain. All systems are operating within normal parameters. The communication channels were alive with urgent chatter as alien scientists tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Some species had theoretical knowledge of gravitational weapons, but none had ever attempted to build one. The engineering challenges were considered insurmountable, the risks too great, the power requirements impossible to meet. How are they containing those forces? Demanded a hegemony technical officer. The magnetic fields required to control that much gravitational distortion should collapse under their own weight. They're using some kind of exotic matter, observed a Vorthon physicist. Look at the energy signatures. That ring isn't made of ordinary material. Dr. Watson decided to enlighten them. The ring contains approximately 1 million tons of compressed neutron matter, held in a stable configuration by electromagnetic fields generating over 10 billion Gauss. It's essentially a miniature neutron star that we can spin up or down as needed. Silence greeted this announcement. Even among civilizations that had mastered faster-than-light travel and energy-to-matter conversion, the casual manipulation of neutron-degenerate matter was considered theoretical at best. "You built a neutron star," Commander Zilith said in a voice barely above a whisper. "You actually built an artificial neutron star and put it inside a spaceship." "We built 12 of them," Chen corrected. "The Perseverance is the first of her class, but not the only one. Each one represents humanity's commitment to defending what we hold dear." The ring reached optimal velocity. The gravitational distortions around the ship intensified to the point where space itself seemed to ripple like water. Strange visual effects danced around the vessel as light bent and twisted through dimensions that normal matter couldn't access. "Weapon system ready, Captain," Dr. Watson reported. "We have achieved stable gravitational cascade potential. Target acquisition systems are online." Captain Chen looked around at her crew one final time. These people had worked for years to make this moment possible. They had endured the mockery, the dismissive comments, the casual assumptions about human inferiority. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humanity was really capable of. "Thank you all for your service," she said quietly. "What we do here today will change everything." She turned back to the communication system and addressed the alien fleets that hung in space around them, no longer laughing, no longer dismissive, but watching with a mixture of fascination and growing terror. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, you have spent this day showing us weapons that can erase matter, bend time, and transform the very nature of reality. You have demonstrated technologies that we can barely comprehend, powers that seem godlike to our primitive human minds." Chen's voice grew harder, taking on the cold precision of someone who had looked into the abyss and chosen to stare back. "Now we want to show you what humans do when we decide that something absolutely must be destroyed. Not damaged, not defeated, not conquered. Completely and utterly removed from existence." The ring sang with gravitational harmonics that resonated through dimensions beyond normal space-time. The Perseverance had become something more than a ship. It was a hole in reality itself, a wound in the fabric of the universe that pulsed with barely contained power. "We're going to tear a star in half," Chen announced calmly. "And then we're going to show you what happens when humans get serious about ending a fight." The silence that followed Captain Chen's announcement was unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. Thousands of alien beings across dozens of species found themselves speechless, their advanced minds struggling to process what they had just heard. Tear a star in half? The concept was so far beyond conventional warfare that many couldn't even comprehend it as a possibility. Admiral Kexthoran was the first to break the silence, his voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and growing horror. "Captain Chen, surely you're not serious. You're talking about destroying a star. The gravitational effects alone would devastate entire solar systems. The energy release could kill millions of innocent beings," Chen interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "Which is exactly why we chose our target very carefully." She gestured to Lieutenant Park, who activated the main holographic display. The image showed a star system 12 light-years away, its red dwarf star surrounded by nothing but empty space and the cold remnants of dead worlds. "The Kepler 442 system," Dr. Watson announced to the assembled fleets. "The star died naturally, 2 million years ago, collapsing into a neutron star. There are no planets, no life, no inhabited structures within 50 light-years. It's the perfect testing ground for a weapon of this magnitude." The alien observers studied the tactical display with professional interest, mixed with mounting dread. The target was indeed sterile, a perfect choice for demonstrating devastating firepower without risking civilian casualties. But the implications of what humanity was proposing still seemed impossible to accept. "You cannot seriously believe you can affect a target 12 light-years away," scoffed Commander Zalith, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. "No weapon has that kind of range. The energy required would require us to manipulate space-time itself," Chen finished, "which is exactly what this weapon does." The massive ring at the heart of the Perseverance continued to spin, its rotation now creating visible distortions in the fabric of reality. Nearby alien ships reported that their sensors were registering readings that violated several known laws of physics. Space itself seemed to bend and twist around the human vessel, creating patterns of light and shadow that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Watson began explaining the technical principles behind their weapon, her voice filled with the excitement of a scientist sharing a lifetime of work. Traditional weapons move energy through space to reach their targets. Projectiles, beams, even exotic matter streams all have to travel from point A to point B. But gravitational manipulation works differently. She activated a series of holographic models showing the structure of space-time itself, displayed as a flexible grid that could be bent and twisted. Gravity isn't a force that travels through space, it is space. When we manipulate gravitational fields, we're directly affecting the dimensional framework that underlies reality. The alien scientists watched in fascination as the demonstration showed how gravitational waves could propagate through higher dimensions, bypassing the normal limitations of spacetime. A properly focused gravitational pulse could theoretically affect targets anywhere in the universe, limited only by the amount of energy available to power the effect. The neutron star ring creates a controlled gravitational collapse, Watson continued. By spinning it at precise frequencies, we can generate gravitational waves that propagate through folded space. The effect reaches the target faster than light because it's not actually traveling through normal space at all. Admiral Kexthoran's tactical officer, a being whose species had mastered quantum mechanics for millennia, raised what seemed like an obvious objection. Even if your theory is sound, the energy requirements would be astronomical. You'd need the output of multiple stars to generate enough gravitational distortion to affect a target at interstellar distances. Chen smiled grimly. You're absolutely right, which is why we don't generate the energy ourselves. We steal it. The Perseverance began its final preparations. Additional systems came online throughout the ship, revealing the true complexity of the weapon platform. What the aliens had mistaken for simple fusion reactors were actually exotic matter converters, devices that transformed ordinary matter into the strange materials needed to manipulate space-time directly. The beauty of gravitational weapons, Dr. Watson explained, is that they use the target's own mass against it. We don't have to send destructive energy across 12 light-years. We just have to create the right kind of gravitational pulse to destabilize the target's internal structure. The target provides its own energy for destruction. The ring reached its final configuration. The neutron matter at its core was now spinning at a significant fraction of light speed, contained within magnetic fields so intense they warped space around them. The gravitational distortions emanating from the weapon were strong enough to affect the orbits of nearby asteroids. All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance of 200,000 kilometers, ordered the Galactic Council moderator, his voice tight with concern. We are detecting gravitational anomalies that exceed all safety protocols. The alien fleets scattered like leaves before a storm, their earlier formations abandoned in favor of getting as far away from the human ship as possible. Some vessels activated emergency jump drives, preparing to flee to neighboring star systems if the demonstration went catastrophically wrong. Captain Chen watched the retreat with professional satisfaction. The same commanders who had mocked humanity's primitive technology were now treating the Perseverance as if it were a live nuclear weapon, which in many ways it was. Target acquisition complete, reported Ensign Rodriguez. Gravitational lens, focused on Kepler 442. We have clear dimensional pathway to the target zone. Weapon systems armed and ready, added Dr. Watson. All safety interlocks show green. We are go for firing sequence. Chen looked around her bridge one final time. Her crew worked with the calm efficiency of people who had trained for this moment for years. Every system had been tested and retested. Every possible failure mode had been planned for. The weapon would work exactly as designed. Before we proceed, she announced to the assembled fleets, I want to make something absolutely clear. This is not an act of aggression. This is not a threat against any member of the Galactic Council. This is a demonstration of defensive capability. She paused, letting her words sink in across the communication channels. Humanity has no desire to conquer the galaxy. We don't want to rule over other species or expand our territory through force. But we will never again allow ourselves to be in a position where our survival depends on the goodwill of others. The neutron star ring sang with harmonics that seemed to come from outside normal spacetime. The gravitational waves it generated were so intense that they created visible distortions in the starfield beyond, making distant suns appear to dance and shimmer like mirages. For 3 centuries, we have prepared for the moment when someone would threaten what we hold dear, Chen continued. We have built weapons that can reach across the galaxy in minutes. We have created defenses that can withstand the fury of dying stars. We have become the species that others call upon when something absolutely must be destroyed. Dr. Watson's fingers moved across her control panel with practiced precision. Gravitational cascade initiated. Dimensional fold establishing, fold complete. We have direct gravitational contact with the target. 12 light-years away, the neutron star that had once been Kepler 442 began to experience forces that had never before been applied to stellar remnants. Gravitational waves focused through folded spacetime struck the ultra-dense object with surgical precision, disrupting the delicate balance between gravitational collapse and neutron degeneracy. Pressure. The effect was invisible to outside observers for several seconds. Then the neutron star's surface began to ripple like water disturbed by a thrown stone. Cracks appeared in the ultra-dense material, spreading across the stellar remnant's surface as gravitational stresses tore at its internal structure. Target, showing initial destabilization, reported Rodriguez. Gravitational harmonics are building toward cascade failure. The alien fleets watched in growing horror as their instruments detected gravitational waves emanating from the distant star system. The pulses were so intense that they registered on sensors across dozens of light-years, creating ripples in spacetime that would be detectable by advanced civilizations throughout the galaxy. What happened next would be recorded in the histories of every species present. The neutron star, an object so dense that a teaspoon of its material would weigh as much as a mountain, simply came apart. Not in a violent explosion, but in a controlled disintegration that defied everything the galactic civilizations thought they knew about stellar physics. The star split along its equatorial plane, its northern and southern hemispheres separating like pieces of a broken egg. Each half retained enough mass to remain gravitationally bound, but they were no longer a single object. The neutron star had been literally torn in two by forces applied across interstellar distances. "My God," whispered Commander Zelith. "They actually did it. They split a neutron star in half." But the humans weren't finished with their demonstration. As the alien observers watched in stunned silence, the gravitational beam from the objects from interstellar distances. Admiral Kexathoran's voice, when it finally came, was barely above a whisper. "Captain Chen, why did you show us this?" Chen's response was immediate and unwavering. "Because you needed to understand what humanity brings to the galactic community. We're not asking to be feared. We're not demanding special treatment or trying to intimidate anyone." She gestured toward the tactical display showing the wounded star system. "But we want every civilization in the galaxy to know that humanity will never be anyone's victim. We will never be conquered, enslaved, or destroyed by beings who think they're superior to us." The communication channels remained silent as thousands of alien beings absorbed the implications of what they had seen. The slow, primitive humans, with their crude technology, had just demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded anything in the galactic arsenal. "The Perseverance is not our only ship of this class," Chen continued. "It's simply the first. We have 11 more vessels under construction, each one capable of projecting this level of force anywhere in the galaxy." Dr. Watson added her own technical note. "The weapon system can be configured for precision strikes against specific targets or area effects that can sterilize entire star systems. The choice of application depends entirely on the threat level we're facing." The weight of these revelations settled over the assembled fleets like a heavy blanket. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia suddenly found themselves reconsidering humanity's place in the cosmic hierarchy. The primitive newcomers had just revealed themselves to be the most dangerous military force in known space. "We hope this demonstration will lead to better understanding between our species," Chen concluded. "Humanity seeks friendship and cooperation with all galactic civilizations. But we want that cooperation to be based on mutual respect, not on anyone's assumption that they can dictate terms to us. The Perseverance began powering down its weapon systems, the massive ring slowly decreasing its rotation speed. The gravitational distortions around the ship gradually faded, allowing normal space-time to reassert itself in the surrounding area. But the message had been delivered with crystal clarity. Humanity had announced its arrival on the Galactic stage not with words or diplomatic gestures, but with a demonstration of power that would reshape interstellar politics for generations to come. The species that had mocked the slow human ship would never make that mistake again. The aftermath of humanity's demonstration created a silence unlike anything in galactic history. For nearly 10 minutes, no voice broke the communication frequencies. Thousands of alien beings across dozens of species stared at their sensor displays, watching the slowly fading gravitational distortions that marked where the Perseverance had torn reality itself. Captain Sarah Chen stood on her bridge, hands clasped behind her back, watching the alien fleets through the main view screen. The same ships that had mocked humanity hours earlier now hung motionless in space, their crews struggling to comprehend what they had witnessed. Some vessels had begun emergency jumps to neighboring systems, their commanders too frightened to remain in the same space as the human weapon platform. Lieutenant Commander Park broke the bridge silence with a whispered observation. "Captain, we're receiving over 3,000 priority communication requests from various fleet commanders. Most of them are marked as urgent diplomatic contacts." Chen almost smiled at that. The same beings who had suggested humanity should stick to asteroid mining were now desperate to open formal discussions. Fear was a powerful motivator for diplomatic engagement. "Put them on hold for now," she ordered. "Let them think about what they've seen before we start talking." Dr. Emily Watson looked up from her station where she was monitoring the weapon's power-down sequence. "Captain, the ring is returning to stable configuration. All systems are showing normal parameters. The demonstration was a complete success." The first voice to break the fleet-wide silence belonged to Admiral Kexa Thorin, but it bore no resemblance to the arrogant, mocking tone he had used earlier. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of someone who had looked into the abyss and realized it was looking back. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, "in my 300 years of military service, I have witnessed the destruction of planets. I have seen entire star systems consumed by artificial black holes. I have watched weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in local space." He paused, and when he continued, his voice was barely above a whisper. "But I have never seen anything that could reach across 12 light-years of space and casually tear apart a neutron star. The implications of what you've just demonstrated, they change everything we thought we knew about warfare." Other voices began to join the conversation, each one carrying the same tone of shocked reverence that had replaced the earlier mockery. Commander Zilith of the Crystalline Consortium spoke for many when she said, "We owe you an apology, Captain. We judged your species by the appearance of your technology rather than its capabilities. That was an error in judgment. The understatement would have been amusing under other circumstances. An error in judgment barely covered the transformation from open mockery to terrified respect that had swept through the alien fleets in the span of minutes." Captain Chen decided it was time to address the broader implications of what had just occurred. She activated the fleet-wide communication system, ensuring that every ship present could hear her words. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Council," she began, "I want you to understand something important about what you've just witnessed. The Perseverance's weapon system represents more than advanced technology. It represents humanity's fundamental approach to survival." She gestured to Lieutenant Park, who activated a holographic display showing Earth's history over the past 4 centuries. Images of massive construction projects, unified global efforts, and scientific breakthroughs filled the space above the bridge. "When we detected that rogue planet approaching our solar system 4 centuries ago, humanity faced a choice. We could have accepted extinction as inevitable. We could have fled to other star systems and abandoned our home world. Or we could have fought back against the universe itself." The historical display showed the construction of the first gravitational manipulator, a project that had consumed the resources of Earth's entire civilization. Massive orbital installations, millions of workers, decades of research and development all focused on a single goal: survival. We chose to fight, Chen continued. Not against other species, not for conquest or glory, but against the cold equations of physics that said our world was doomed. We built weapons that could move planets because that's what survival required. Dr. Watson added her own perspective on humanity's unique approach to technology. Other species developed faster than light, traveled to explore the galaxy, to find new worlds and resources. Humanity developed it to save the world we already had. That difference in motivation has shaped everything about our civilization. The alien observers listened with growing understanding. Humanity's seemingly primitive approach to engineering, brute force solutions, massive over-engineering, weapons designed to solve impossible problems, suddenly made perfect sense. They weren't crude or backward. They were the products of a species that had learned to survive by breaking the rules of what was considered possible. The Galactic Council's official moderator finally spoke, his voice carrying the authority of civilizations that had ruled space for millennia. But even that authority seemed diminished after what everyone had witnessed. Captain Chen, the Council needs to discuss the implications of your demonstration. The existence of weapons capable of interstellar effects. This changes the entire framework of galactic security. I understand your concerns, Chen replied, which is why I want to make humanity's position absolutely clear before those discussions begin. She moved to the center of her bridge, positioning herself where every camera feed would capture her image. This was the moment that would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for centuries to come. The United Earth government has authorized me to make the following statement to the Galactic Council and all member species. First, humanity seeks peaceful cooperation with all civilizations. We have no territorial ambitions beyond our current colonial boundaries. We do not wish to conquer, rule, or dominate other species. The communication channels remained silent, every being present hanging on her words. Second, humanity will never initiate aggressive action against any galactic civilization. Our weapons exist purely for defensive purposes. We will not use them to threaten, coerce, or intimidate other species into compliance with human demands. Admiral Kexthorin interrupted, with an obvious question. And your third point, Captain? Chen's smile was cold as the vacuum of space. Third, humanity will never again allow itself to be in a position where our survival depends on the goodwill or forbearance of others. Any species that threatens human worlds, human colonies, or human civilians will discover exactly what happens when we decide something absolutely must be destroyed. The weight of that promise settled over the assembled fleets like a physical presence. Every commander present understood that they had just heard the birth of a new galactic superpower, one that had announced itself not through conquest, but through a demonstration of utterly overwhelming defensive capability. Over the next hour, the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened via quantum communication links. The debate that followed would be remembered as one of the most significant diplomatic moments in galactic history. The motion to classify human vessels as support only was withdrawn without discussion. In its place, a new classification was created: humanity, strategic deterrent species. It was a designation that had never been used before, reserved for civilizations whose military capabilities were so overwhelming that their mere existence served to maintain galactic peace. The hegemony's planned expansion into the outer rim colonies, which would have displaced millions of refugee populations, was quietly cancelled. Admiral Kexthorin announced that his government had decided to focus on internal development projects. Instead, no one mentioned that these colonies now fell under humanity's informal protection, but everyone understood the subtext. Trade agreements that had been stalled for decades were suddenly approved. The Crystalline Consortium offered humanity access to exotic matter refinement techniques in exchange for gravitational sensor technology. The Vorthan Collective proposed joint research into dimensional physics. Even the mysterious Cyrene hive mind expressed interest in establishing diplomatic relations. Captain Chen watched these developments with satisfaction but not surprise. Fear was indeed a powerful motivator for diplomacy, but it was temporary. What would last was the respect that came from understanding humanity's true capabilities and intentions. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Park, "we're receiving formal requests for defense pacts from 17 smaller species. They're all civilizations that have been threatened by larger powers in the past." Chen nodded. She had expected this as well. The galaxy was full of species that lived in fear of their more powerful neighbors. Now they had found a protector who could enforce their safety from any distance. Draft responses indicating that Earth is willing to consider mutual defense agreements with any peaceful civilization, she ordered. "Make it clear that our protection extends to all beings who face extinction or subjugation, regardless of their technological level or political importance." Dr. Watson looked up from her station with a question that had been bothering her throughout the day. "Captain, do you think we've done the right thing? Showing them the weapon, I mean." Some of those species looked genuinely terrified. Chen considered the question carefully before answering. "Doctor, for the past 6 hours, we've been treated like primitive savages who were lucky to be invited to watch their betters demonstrate real military technology. Our ships were classified as support vessels. Our entire species was dismissed as suitable only for menial labor." She gestured toward the view screen where the alien fleet still hung in space, no longer mocking but respectful and cautious. "Now those same beings are requesting defense pacts and offering us access to their most advanced technologies. They're canceling aggressive wars and reconsidering their expansion plans. Fear may have motivated the change, but the result is a more peaceful galaxy." The truth of that statement was already becoming apparent. Across dozens of star systems, military commanders were reconsidering planned operations. Aggressive species were calculating whether their objectives were worth risking humanity's attention. Smaller civilizations were breathing easier, knowing that someone was watching out for them. 6 months later, the effects of humanity's demonstration were still rippling through galactic politics. The Perseverance had returned to Earth orbit, but 11 more vessels of her class were under construction in secret shipyards throughout human space. Their existence was an open secret, discussed in whispers but never officially acknowledged. Captain Chen stood in her ready room aboard the newly commissioned UES Determination, watching Earth turn slowly outside her viewport. The planet that had nearly been destroyed by a rogue world 4 centuries ago was now the center of a defensive network that could protect any corner of the galaxy. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. The communication was from Admiral Kex Thorin, now serving as humanity's official military liaison to the Galactic Council. "Captain Chen," his image appeared on the screen, "I wanted to personally thank you for your restraint during the fleet review. My staff has run probability calculations on what would have happened if humanity had chosen a more aggressive approach to galactic relations." Chen almost smiled. "And what did they conclude, Admiral?" "That we would all be speaking human by now," he replied with gallows humor. "Your species could have conquered the entire galaxy within a decade if you had chosen to do so. The fact that you opted for defensive deterrence instead, it speaks well of humanity's character." After the communication ended, Chen returned to watching Earth turn below her ship. Somewhere down there, human children were learning about the stars, dreaming of exploring the galaxy and meeting alien civilizations. They would grow up in a universe where humanity was respected rather than dismissed, where human colonies were safe from attack, and where the species that had mocked them now sought their protection. It was a good legacy to leave for future generations. The slow, dangerous human ships continued their patrols through the galaxy, each one carrying weapons that could reach across interstellar distances to defend the innocent and deter the aggressive. They moved at their own pace, built to their own standards, and served their own concept of justice. And the stars themselves bore the scars to prove that when humans decided something absolutely must be destroyed, the universe itself would bend to make it happen. The mockery had ended. The respect would endure forever.